What's up everyone, dude? Literally today we're talking about one of my favorite phones I've ever owned in my life. That kind of round up, but the iPhone 6s Plus is one of the phones I think I bring up almost just as much as the newer iPhones. This and the iPhone 6s respectively. These are phones that just blew me out of the water and they still blow me to this day, so pretty crazy, that's what she said. I didn't really mean to put it like that, but now this is also one of those iPhones, and I think every single iPhone at this point that was released prior that I made a video about early last year has definitely gotten better since last year. So think about this. If you're getting this phone now, which is even older than it was last year, you will be getting a better phone than what you would get if you bought it even newer than what it was last year. I know that's kind of like a math equation, but it's pretty crazy what software can do for a phone. And a lot of things have actually changed throughout the last year, and just like a lot of the other iPhones. And before going forward, I kind of want to look backwards, but man, this phone came out in 2015, so this year it'll actually turn 4 years old. So in September, you gotta wait till then. It's about like 3.5 years at this point. Now, like I stated, this was my second iPhone I ever owned as a main phone, and I owned it in 2017 before I switched to the iPhone 7 Plus, and I did own it for a little bit on iOS 11, and dude, that thing had a bunch of bugs in it and it had a lot of glitches. When I reviewed it last year, it was still on iOS 11. I didn't really like iOS 11 that much. I don't think anybody really did. It had a lot of bugs, a lot of glitches. But one thing with iOS 11 though that I liked was battery life. I know a lot of people was kind of different per person. Some people had a really good battery life, some people had a horrible battery life. For my specific device, I didn't really find battery life to be that bad. So that was really the only advantage with iOS 11, but really everything else, it wasn't really that good. A lot of bugs, a lot of crashes, the experience just wasn't that good last year. But then midway through 2018, we actually got iOS 12, which was so much better. It still wasn't perfect though. There's still some bugs and glitches, but we're still getting updates, so I don't want to go too hard on that. But it brought a lot of cool features, and it brought group FaceTime, it brought group notifications, and overall, I think the speed did increase. I literally just bought another iPhone 6s Plus, not only for this video, but to do all those iOS comparisons and iOS reviews that I do. And I can tell you this phone has definitely gotten speedier throughout the iOS 12, life that it's had. And it's even surprising in some cases. I made a whole separate video talking about the specific speed increase of the iPhone 6s Plus, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later if you haven't even seen the video. But one thing that I kind of mentioned earlier is that I did notice the battery life did decrease a tiny bit with iOS 12, but again, I noticed that across the board. It's really not that big of a deal, but I think it might actually get better with the upcoming updates. And another thing, actually, Apple stopped selling the iPhone 6s Plus, the iPhone 6s, and the iPhone SE in the Apple Store, so you can't buy them anymore. That's a pretty humongous update. So you can't go to the Apple Store buy it, but you can definitely go on like eBay or Craigslist or buy it through there. A lot of other websites do it too. So that's pretty much your options of buying it. So that pretty much brings us to this point today. All those things that passed are behind us. We're going to move on. It's a new year. It's a new me. I'm sure it's a new you as well. So now looking around the body, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen an iPhone 6s Plus in your lifetime, or even an iPhone 6 or any phone like that. If you've never seen an iPhone before, I don't even know why you're watching this video. But it has that familiar design. It has the home button on the front. It does have Touch ID too, which is super cool. I like Touch ID more than Face ID. Hopefully they bring that back. Please, Apple, bring it back. But the screen is 5.5 inches. I don't even know if I already said that. It's 1080p. It's a very, very decent panel. It's not OLED, it's IPS. And honestly, if you're getting a used phone from 2015, I don't think you're expecting too much. So I'll definitely say that for this price tag and for the year that it was released, it's really not that bad of an option if I'm being dead honest. Now, lucky for you, it has two features that one of the newer iPhones and a lot of the newer iPhones don't have. The one that a lot of the newer iPhones don't have is the headphone jack. Guys, I don't know why I confuse myself in these videos. Sometimes I just stumble over my words, but it does have the headphone jack, which a lot of the newer iPhones don't have. So that's a huge advantage. And on top of that, one huge advantage that this has over the iPhone XR specifically is Force Touch. So this was the first iPhone along with the iPhone 6s to bring Force Touch. And I swear to God, if Apple removes it from the newer iPhones, I'm going to probably never buy another iPhone ever again. So Apple, please do not remove Force Touch from your phones, but this phone has it, so you'll pretty much be set in that aspect. Now, it does have a 5 megapixel camera up front, and it has a 12 megapixel camera on the back, and I'll go into a little bit further in depth about those. But turning it on, we do have iOS 12.1.2 like I stated, and overall I think the stability has definitely increased for sure since last year, and I like the experience a lot. I like iOS 12 a lot more than iOS 11, and like I stated, I've done tons of tests. I've done so many speed and comparisons and all those things, even on my second channel, Lo-Fi Alpaca, which is linked in the description. You should definitely subscribe to that. I've done a lot of speed tests with the iPhone 6s Plus, comparing it to a lot of other phones as well, and I find that the speed overall is getting better and better through every update. I mean, sometimes there's updates where it gets slower, but overall I've seen the speed increase overall. So if you want to see more videos about the iPhone 6s Plus, go check out my second channel, link below. So that kind of covers what's going on right now. But in terms of the longevity of the software, I'll say, you know, it's definitely getting the remainder of iOS 12. Obviously, it's not going to stop right now, but I'm pretty sure it's going to get all of iOS 13 as well. I'm saying that's a minimum. It's definitely going to get iOS 13. So even at that point, you're getting the remainder of this life cycle, so up to June, and you're getting a whole nother year after that. So you're getting about a year and a half support, depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching it when I upload it, a year and a half, but if you're watching this in like May or December, you kind of have to time it out from there. But I would say up until June of 2020, that's the minimum when this phone is going to stop getting updates. But there are some people who state that it might get iOS 14. I honestly don't know. I think we'll find out later on. I think once iOS 13 comes out, we'll have a better idea. If iOS 13 is completely horrible, it might get iOS 14. But as of this point, I'm pretty sure it's going to stop at iOS 13, but I hope I'm wrong. But at least another year and a half support for sure, which is still a good thing, you know? Now moving on to the hardware side of things, we have the Apple A9 chip, we have a dual-core CPU, and we have 2 gigs of RAM. And I think that the performance is actually fairly solid still, you know. I'm not going to say this thing is the craziest performing phone ever. You know, I hyped this and the iPhone 6s up a lot, I understand that. But honestly, from day-to-day usage, even when I owned it just like a year ago in 2017, late 2017 I owned it, but I didn't really find this thing to be super slow. And even now when I'm buzzing through apps and opening things and multitasking, I don't think like it's super slow or anything like that. But what I will say is that as long as you're not comparing it against something, I think you'll find it fairly decent. But here's the crazy thing, and I mentioned this earlier on in this video. I compared this phone, okay, the iPhone 6s Plus, to the iPhone 8 Plus and the iPhone 10 on iOS 12. Okay, so this was like a few months ago. And I found that the iPhone 6s Plus was faster at opening the apps than the iPhone 8 Plus and the iPhone 10. And that was the craziest thing ever. I think it was like a glitch. But here's the weird thing also, the multi-core scores were much higher on the iPhone 10 and 8 Plus. So that just proves that multi-core scores don't really mean anything. But I think it was just a glitch on the iPhone 6s Plus side. I don't think the iPhone 8 Plus and iPhone 10 were super slow. I just think the iPhone 6s Plus for that specific update was just so much more faster, which kind of leads me to beg the question, what is Apple doing on the back end that makes the iPhone 6s Plus that much slower? Are they deliberately making it slower? They kind of were with the battery slowdown thing early on in last year, but I mean, I just find that super crazy. Now it kind of leveled out, so the iPhone 8 Plus and iPhone 10 are still about the same speed, but I found that super crazy. And you can actually, I'll try to link that video down in the description if you want to watch it, but that was a super crazy thing that happened. And also kind of going along with that, gaming is also fairly good as well. Again, there might be some skip frames for some games. You know, Real Racing 3 might not run 100% perfectly fine, but casual games are perfect. You're not going to run into any problems there. I would say all games are pretty much optimized for this thing, and I guess the RAM that it has, the 2 gigs, are perfectly fine. The Apple A9 chip, I think that chip is fairly good, and I think it will last you for the remainder of whatever iOS 13. Hopefully, iOS 13 is going to be a big redesign. As long as you're on an iPhone 6s at the minimum, even the iPhone 6s Plus, they share the same specs, I think you'll be set. But overall, I like the performance of this phone, and even though it's not the fastest thing ever, and it's older, and it doesn't have the Apple A12 Bionic, whatever, I think you're not going to be too mad, especially when you're considering the price you're going to eventually be paying for this phone. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. Now moving on to the camera, it has a 12 megapixel single camera on the back, but it's not a bad single camera, you know. I think the photos will still look very, very good depending on the lighting. Even if you're indoors, it's not that bad of a camera. Interesting fact, all the iPhones after this also have 12 megapixel sensors, which doesn't really mean a lot. You know, megapixels don't mean everything. The newer iPhones obviously are better cameras. They have more features in them, portrait mode, studio, lighting, whatever that thing's called. Obviously a secondary lens for telephoto, zoom and all that stuff. But I'll tell you for sure, this camera is still on the better side. It's definitely not bad. You're not going to get too many grainy photos. Surprisingly, I compared this to the iPhone XR camera just like a month or two ago, and I found that the iPhone 6s Plus camera is still pretty close to the iPhone XR. And sometimes you can't even tell which one is better if I'm being completely honest. But the XR does have more features in it, no doubt. But the iPhone 6s Plus is for sure very good still. If you need effects like portrait mode and things like that, then you know, maybe that might be something for you to go up to like an iPhone 7 Plus or something. But you can still mimic a lot of those features and a lot of those like effects in like Photoshop or even like free apps on your iPhone. So kind of a quick little tip, but if you really need that type of portrait mode bokeh effect, obviously the 7 Plus would be the next cheaper option up, which I will be making a video on very soon. Also, the iPhone 6s Plus can shoot 4K videos, and it can shoot 1080p videos up to 120 frames per second, which is awesome. Overall, I like this camera, no doubt. Even when I owned it, I really wasn't picky about it. I filmed a lot of videos on this channel with my iPhone 6s Plus, even in 2017. So definitely less than 2 years ago, I was doing that. So I'll say that the camera, as long as you're not picky, it'll be perfectly fine. Switching to the battery life, I think it's definitely on the better side of things as well. I think the iPhone 6s had pretty bad battery life, but the iPhone 6s Plus is so much better. It's a 2,750 milliamp hour battery, and when I had it as my main phone in 2017, I would normally end the day with around like 30%. You know, I really wouldn't even be freaking out about, oh my god, my phone's about to die. I think my iPhone 10 now has worse battery life than my iPhone 6s Plus, which kind of makes sense because the iPhone 10 is a much faster and a much powerful phone, but I feel like the chipset would have something, I don't know. But here's the thing, we're on iOS 12 now, and if you're getting an iPhone 6s Plus with iOS 12, I'll say that the battery life definitely has decreased a little bit. Not like 45% difference or anything like that. What I'll say is that if you usually end the day with 30%, you might end the day now with like 25%, 22%, somewhere along that line. It's not crazy, but it is kind of noticeable if you know what I mean. And definitely over time, you will notice like, oh, my phone's about to die, I gotta go charge it. Wait, like when I was on iOS 11, it never acted like that. But you know, it is what it is. But depending on your usage, you probably still wouldn't be able to kill this thing in a day. What I will say is that I would highly recommend you going to your battery settings in the settings app and seeing if your battery's health is actually lower than like 90%. If it is, I would probably recommend you to get it replaced. But again, Apple's not doing their $29 replacement anymore. So you might end up just kind of like figuring out what to do from there. Maybe if you want to replace it yourself, which is really not that hard to do. And that's another huge feature of the iPhone 6s Plus is that it's fairly easy to repair and parts for this thing are super cheap. So if you crack the screen or you need a new battery, it's really not that hard to replace, but you should definitely do more research before you even consider doing that if you've never taken apart a phone. So some other notable things to note, there's no wireless charging, which could suck for you. For me, I don't even use wireless charging on my iPhone 10, so it's not even that big of a deal. There is a bit of water resistance for this phone, so that's super cool. They didn't really advertise it, but the screen is a little coated, so if you plan on replacing the screen, definitely figure out how to get that water sealing. I think you lose your water resistance for that, but it's whatever. Now here's a humongous thing. Prices have decreased a bit from last year, so they were around $250 for one, I think for around the 16 gig, 32 gig variant, but now they actually went down about $50, so they're about $200 now. So not a huge discount, but the prices are actually going down, so that's definitely a good thing, but they're not going like way down. So that's actually a good thing too, because resale value should still be decent when you go to resell it. Maybe if you want to only keep it for a couple months, if you get one for like $200, you can end up maybe even selling it for like $210 if you keep it in good condition. So maybe it's up to you, but whether you buy it or you sell it, you won't be losing too much money on it, and they've actually went down in price. So that's a really cool thing. So to answer the question, is the iPhone 6s Plus still worth it in 2019? I will say, dude, absolutely. Okay, I think it's still an awesome iPhone for the price. You get all the features of iOS. Even with iOS 12, you get group notifications, group FaceTime, iMessage, FaceTime, all those good things. And you're even going to get iOS 13 in the next coming months. So this phone should easily last you for another year and a half without any problems. Obviously, there's going to be problems with software with iOS 13. Once you get that, there's going to be a lot of bugs with it, but hardware-wise, I think you're going to be perfectly fine. I'll say, man, if you can find one for around $200, you might be even able to find one for less than $200, maybe even like the $150 to $200 range. Honestly, if you're not expecting like an extreme gaming phone, I'm not saying this phone is the greatest phone you ever have, but if you're coming from like an older Android or even an older iPhone, let's say you have an iPhone 5S, or you have like a Galaxy S4, a Galaxy S5, or LG G2, and you want to kind of see what iPhone's about and you don't want to spend a ton of money on the iPhone XS or XS Max, the iPhone 6s Plus, dude, is a solid option. I owned it for a very long time and I love this thing and I still love it. I still own it. So I'll definitely say that this phone will last you a long time, and I think it's still worth it in 2019. Now, you can find them pretty cheap on eBay or Craigslist, but if you want a certified refurbished one, which I always recommend because they usually come with warranties, I will actually link the cheapest one that I find on Amazon so you can get it from there. It's super convenient and you actually help out the channel at the same time. So you can help me make more videos like this and do more reviews and do more giveaways and things like that. So check out the first link in the description. It should be the first link if you want to go buy that. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button. That'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.